So this is more or less my whole PhD presentation or attempt at it. So my PhD is within tracking and forecasting of ocean fronts using satellite ocean data and USVs. So a little bit about myself is that I'm a PhD at DCS within the ECS school. And I've been doing this for almost 4 years now. So I should be finishing quite soon. My supervisors are Kalle and Jonas. I've done my bachelor's and master's mostly in Porto University, but also in Delft. And I'm a member of the WAP committee, which is the committee that arranges networking for women, PhDs and postdocs at KTH. And another thing is that I'm always happy to discuss research and collaborate. That's the way I like to do my work. Currently, I have some students. I have Mariam, Diogo, Jingley, and Alexandre from different universities. And a bit of their work is going to be in their presentation, in this presentation as well. I also collaborate with some people from my division, like Miguel and Amr, but also with some people from outside, like João from Porto University. And possibly you as well. So first, one type of ocean fronts that I've been considering quite a bit is algal bloom. And you can see in the case of Sweden, since 2013, in many different parts, you have been having a few troubles with it. So first you have here on the southern of the Baltic Sea, you also have in Malmo, and overall problems like drinking water and people not being able to swim because of this problem. So I would say it's quite a relevant problem that a few people are tackling. So my big question is how to track these and forecast these algal blooms or these ocean fronts. And I can divide this big question into these 3 main questions. So the first one is how to control USVs to detect algal blooms and collect data, which is the one that I did for my licentiate. Second one is how to merge local USV data with global satellite data. And finally, it would be how to design an experimental mission in the sea or the ocean by applying these developed protocols. So the outline for my presentation would be a little bit of my PhD thesis outline, so you understand my thought process and these 3 questions, how I'm answering these 3 questions. So regarding my PhD thesis, you can get an idea that I have worked on cooperative circumnavigation and target tracking, single agent front detection and tracking, and I have done some Neptus and Dune implementations. Currently, I'm working mostly on chapter 5, which is algal bloom forecast using satellite ocean data. And I have planned this chapter 6 and 8 for ocean sampling integration of local and global data. And I'm also planning for some ocean experiments. If we go a bit more inside of the chapters, I've done some publications, mostly in chapter 3 and 4. Here in chapter 3, I'm still working on some lab experiments in SML with a drone. Chapter 5 is the current work. And here I've done also some publication for chapter 7, and the rest I would say it's mostly future work. So for this first question, I can show you some results so you get an idea of what I've been developing. So overall, I would summarize all of my results as having this type of architecture. So we have a satellite and we have the ocean or the sea, and then we have these 3 main blocks. So the first block, I call this target estimation block. So first of all, the target could be a circle, a shape, or a front, and it could be algal bloom, or it could be a salinity plume at the Douro River, for example. So there are many options for this target. And the type of sensing, it could be concentration-based, so the concentration of algal bloom or salinity, for example, or it could also be distance-based, so distance to the target. Regarding estimation protocols, I've used all the ones here, and I think there are many options. You could do adaptive estimations. You could do simpler ones like least squares or interpolation. And I'm going to show you results for all of them. Then we have the second block. So after we have some target estimation, we're going to develop a control law such that the USV or AUV moves as we wish. So I divide this into this perpendicular and this tangent movement. So if you see this image here, we can control the movement perpendicular to the front and along this front. So perpendicularly, we can define if we want the USV to be always on top of the front, or if we want to do some sort of small area scanning or bigger area scanning, depending on that part. And then regarding the tangent movement, you can kind of define the speed of the USV along such front. But after having this target estimation and this control law, we also have the USV model. And I divided into two very distinct options, the point mass and the detailed USV model. So the point mass I have used quite extensively. And I think it has been very, very relevant considering the USV would be 1 meter and these fronts can be many, many kilometers. So it has been very relevant for proof of convergence and for studies. But now more recently, I've been using a more detailed USV model, even more for now implementation on Dune and Neptus. And we have here one result for a circular target using adaptive estimation and with a distance-based sensing. And I have here a second result. In this case, we have this ellipsoid target, which is also moving a little bit. And in this case, I do distributed sensing, and we still have this distance-based sensing. In this case here, I'm using algal bloom data from SynMod from NTNU. So this is in the Norwegian Sea, near NTNU, kind of, on the archipelago area. So I took this data and these agents are detecting this circle around this circular algae bloom. And it's also distance-based sensing. So they keep more or less equal along this circle, and they do some sort of zigzag on it. For this one, I'm also using the same data set from SynMod from the same location, but in this case, we have more of a front, as you can see. And in this case, we have a single USV that is measuring the concentration of algae bloom at each point. And by measuring these concentrations, it draws this red vector that indicates what the direction of the biggest concentration of algae bloom. So it saves the past measurements, and with that, it can estimate. I also have here some recent lab experiments. So this is not a finished product. We're still adjusting the controls for this drone, but the idea is very simple. We project this algae bloom video, the drone should detect it, as you can see here in this image, and then it should track it in this exact circular motion that you see. You can see there is a bit of an error, which should be fixed soon, hopefully. So I also have this front tracking with zig-zag and yoyo. So this is a very interesting scenario. So I've been mostly showing you examples with algae bloom. In this case, this is from my home city. This is Porto in Portugal. And there is here a Douro River. And this river expels water here. So you can see here the very big difference in salinity. So here is the ocean and here is the mixed water. So in this case, we have the free blocks again. And for target estimation, we are using a very simple and very effective method, which is linear interpolation using the last two front crossings. So if you can see through this image, there are these white dots. So saving these two last white dots and drawing a line, then we can do a perpendicular. And then we get here this red arrow, which indicates the direction of a higher salinity concentration. And that was enough to do a very, very nice tracking here. So, but in this case, the control law is also very interesting. It's a zigzag motion, as you can see, because we want to collect some data in and around the front. And we also have an underwater yo-yo. So this is the view from the top, but we also have some 3D motion going on. And regarding USV model, we are using detailed USV model, sensitive to noise and water currents. So it's even more interesting. And here I also have a video. You can see here, it's moving, and this white dot is every time it crosses the front. You can see the red arrow detection. And this was for 2 meters per second, so a bit fast, and for a total mission time of 6 hours, which is what we consider doable for this type of mission. So, but that was how to track these ocean fronts. Now I have this other question that I'm trying to answer, which is how to merge these very nice local USV data with available global satellite data. So for this question, we have these two parts. This part of how to predict and forecast algal blooms solely based on satellite data, and then we have this other part on how to integrate the local and the global data. So for this first part, I'm considering the scenario of prediction of chlorophyll based on water parameters. So our input would be parameters like temperature, salinity, pH, all that you can see here in this image. And our output would be the chlorophyll concentration. So we would want to build some model trained on years of data from Copernicus. And this would possibly depend on the season and region of the Baltic Sea. So that's why it's current work. We're still analyzing how to handle this dependence. And then we also have this forecast part. So in this case, our input would be all the past chlorophyll concentration of a given region, and the output would be the future concentration. So for example, tomorrow's weather forecast for algae bloom. So the model would be similar. We would train it on years of data from Copernicus, and it could also depend on the region and the season. So regarding this region and season, I have here a map so you understand my thought process. Here in the Baltic Sea, you can see we have north, south points, and for each point, we have here the concentration of chlorophyll from January to December. So you see all of them have a peak in the summer, but still they're quite different from each other, as you see. And here in the south, even in the winter, you have a bit of concentration, but in the north, you can see there's almost no algae. Yeah, so they're very, I think they behave very differently. Then I have the second part where I want to merge the satellite data and the local data. So one part of this integration is optimizing a trajectory for minimizing uncertainty. So let's say that we have a region with forecasted satellite data with non-uncertainty as well. Then we want to have the best path for the AUV while passing through some number of nodes. For example, if you're doing front tracking, you want to keep around the front. But we want to prioritize regions with higher uncertainty or higher gradient. So if we keep in regions that uncertainty is very low, or the temperature of the salinity is very constant, then we're not gonna get such improvement as if we try to do this optimization. So I think this can be very interesting as well. But after doing this data collection, then we really wanna integrate it with the satellite data. So we would use this satellite data as an initialization. So it could be an image from yesterday, but ideally it would be a forecast update of today. And then we would use the AUV to collect data through the path it took. And then ideally, we would use this Gaussian regression process. And the initial estimation that we have here, as well as its variance, should be updated to a less noisy, less uncertain image. And this brings me to my last question, which is how to design an experimental mission in the sea or ocean by applying these developed protocols. So this part is absolutely future work, but I have implemented one of the protocols in Neptus and Dune, and these are the results. This is a little bit south of Stockholm. We have here this kind of front of algae, and we have here this mission that the USV goes towards the front and then follows it. And we have a second plan for this Neptus implementation, which is for a salinity plume in Douro River. And this is not yet the implementation itself. This is what it's going to look like after it's implemented. So this is just MATLAB for now. But here you can see the zigzag pattern along the front. And the more yellow points are higher salinity, and the more green ones are these more sweet or salty water. And then for ocean experiments themselves, I would have possibly this algal bloom front tracking on the Baltic Sea. And this could be experiments with one of these entities. And in this experiment, we would use a USV or a UV paired with some algae sensor, such as this one here that I talked with Ivan about. And another ocean experiment I'm planning would be with LSTS in the Douro River plume that I showed you in Porto. And we would possibly use a UV like this with a CTD sensor that essentially measures salinity. Yeah, so these are all of my plans for now and for the future. And that concludes my talk.
Thank you very much, Joana. Questions to Joana?